Hello and welcome into the SorareData Football Strategy Show. I am Andrew Laird. You can find me as Lairdinho on Sorare. Joined as always by Sean Newsham, PSU fans too. Pico player calls me out. Laird late again. This is true. Totally my fault. Thank you for sticking around. ZM Star knows why we're really here. Why Gil is great and other guys.
That's feels fair to me. Yeah, I saw ZM Star saying that Andy Black is his favorite person in the SorareData podcast community. I'm
used to be.
I mean, I think ZM Star just is out there. You know, he's like a Fairwater fan. He just goes and like jumps between people and picks. I feel like his favorite is not
Nuggets fan.
Not a stronghold.
Loves Man City. Sure. Jonathan, thanks for being late. I just got home. Hey, see, just trying to help everyone out. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Germ, new shirt later. This is not a new shirt. It's just an old Sorare shirt. You just happen to be noticing it. So, yeah, thank you to everyone for joining us. If you guys could please hit the like button on the video. Although I did get called out by somebody somewhere on Twitter that was like, no, I watched the whole thing. And if I like it, I will like the video. And I don't know. It's not that important to like that, to have to like something that much just to like the video. So anyway, thank you everybody for joining us today to talk about Carlos Gil and a bunch of other players. But really why we're here is to talk about why those players are important and what makes players great. And it's not in terms of like, there's nothing about real life football in this conversation. Just for the record, I don't care how anyone is in real life. We're here to talk about Sorare scores. And so if there are any comments we're like, no, he's actually really good. I don't care. If he doesn't score on Sorare, we don't care. So that's why we're here. But I think it's really important to talk about, because it comes up in a lot of our conversations of like why Vlahovic is not at the top of our lists, and why we have problems with Erling Haaland a lot, and why Carlos Gil is important. And I feel like we kind of mention it a lot, but we don't actually discuss it. So that was the point of today. And hopefully that just clears up everything. Simple as that.
Yeah. So here's a funny trivia question for the users. Both of us, Laird and I, are currently on a podium in an all-star competition. However, one of us did not use Carlos Gil in that lineup. Which one of us was it? Let's see if they can get it correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a situation where the key guys are best used to support everyone, right? And I guess like it's kind of a weird situation where we've talked about before, like you can play weird players. Like I will have weird players in certain situations, and will play like Melly Muhlenstein, like we talked about. Like I had Melly Muhlenstein in a U23 Rare Pro lineup that was able to get me on a podium. The key is with Melly Muhlenstein, I have some alpha type players that support him. So like if I'm playing a Melly Muhlenstein because he has a great matchup on a certain week, then I want to make sure that I have the best possible guys around him to enhance that great week. So it's a situation where like that is key. And like that's what those players are. Like the players that are like the high end guys are not necessarily the high-end guys because they're the best scorers and everything, which they are, but they're there because like they're the best support pieces you can have to other players and making things happen elsewhere. So for those that did not guess correctly, I am the one that did not have Carlos Gil in a podium lineup currently. Shockingly enough, and I wish I did because I would be in first if I did, but it just didn't happen with him being in that lineup. So Laird is representing Carlos Gil on the podium, who unfortunately got stat corrected down to 98.5 points on the weekend. I know. So it's very unfortunate.
That's outrageous.
Aaron Walker has said that mistakes were made. It's Haber is in here. It's Haber.
Speaking of mistakes,
that mistakes were made. He made one pretty hefty one that could cost him dearly today. But yeah, like I think that there's a lot of merit on these big guys and like what you need them and why you need them and what you need to do with them. And then also like there's a lot of discussion points of like if you should buy them and which ones you should buy, and like, do you buy all of them? Do you buy some of them? And the answers vary from user to user. Like, obviously, it's not realistic for every user to have Carlos Gil, have Messi, have Dusan Tadic. Like someone, a whale like Laird does have the ability to do that, right? Laird can have all those guys, but a lot of people can't. And if you can't, you got to find different ways to enhance your other guys to make them as good as possible when they are in spots to make them like those guys for sure. Because we've talked about it before, but I would say only briefly, but it's definitely something to note. People think that Lionel Messi is Lionel Messi every week. Lionel Messi is a different player every week because he scores differently. So the same goes for everyone else as well. You could have a player who has just a fantastic matchup on a weekend. That player is different than what his average is. Like the actual player card, right, that you have of a player, like if I have a Carlos Gil card, my Carlos Gil card is the average of like Carlos Gil every single game week. Each individual game week, that card is a different player for that one individual game week. If Carlos Gil is at home against Inter Miami, that is much different than Carlos Gil away against Philly Union. They're just two different situations, and you need to be able to understand that and utilize that information to best construct your lineups.
Yeah, I wasn't even going there with it, but I think that is something we should discuss. But I think because we talk about why all-around average scores are important, but I feel like people continue to maybe not ignore it, but I appreciate that a lot of our conversations in terms of lineups are focused on winning, like coming in first place or podiums or just like high finishes. And in those situations, which I think we all would like to be in, it's effectively impossible to get there just off decisive actions. And the fact that there are only literally a handful of times where players have hit 100 or even just 90s just off decisive actions, and yet people continue to be like, I'm going to take this guy because I think he's going to score this week. And it's like, is 62 enough for you? And they're like, no, but he's going to score. I'm like, and that's the 62 that you're getting. And they're just like players that I wanted to like bring up today, both high A and low A. But the reason why we make such a huge deal about all around scores is if the decisive comes, you're not scoring 62. You're hopefully getting 72, 82. So Sean, given the choice of a high AA player who's highly unlikely to get a decisive, or the opposite, a low A player that like should get a decisive, which one do you prefer?
I want the guy with the high AA all the time.
And why?
Because when he gets his decisive, let's say he gets a decisive 10, 20% of the time, that 10 to 20% of the time, I'm very likely to get a 80, 90, 100 point game. The guy that gets a decisive like 75% of the time, but he is only going to get you 60 points, that's great to some extent. It's just not going to fully cut it, especially in highly contested competitions like All-Star Rare Pro, All-Star Limited, like any competition that's like heavily contested competition, it is difficult to do that. So I want the high AA guy that is less likely to score than the guy that's very likely to score that has no A. However, the guy you really want is the guy that has a good combination of both.
For sure. Like Carlos Gil. No, I think the thing that a lot of people also forget, and it's one of those that like, yeah, we all know this, but goals and assists are not the only decisive actions. And so sometimes if you have some center back defensive midfielder who like never moves up, they can still get a clearance off the line. Like those random things like happen. And it's not anything that you can project easily, but there's that alone that those types of players, if they get that clearance off the line, it's like, oh, I have 85 points now instead of the 62 from your goal scorer.
Correct. Like every player, like doesn't really matter, I guess, how like limited you are. You still have a 5 to 10% chance at a score point. Like for a goalie obviously is going to be less, but they have their own decisives and clean sheets. And if you look at like any defender, like you probably look at someone, they're probably going to get a decisive every 20, 30 games, just because there's going to be times where they win a knockdown header and the ball goes down off of someone else and they get an assist. Or there's going to be times where like a center midfielder who just is very uninvolved passes the ball to someone and they dribble two people and score. Like it's just going to happen. And then, like you said, you factor in there's goal line clearances. Everyone's possible to get a goal line clearance. There's last man tackles. Everyone's possible to get a last man tackle. Obviously, they are more geared towards goalies than they are towards or defenders, I'm sorry, than they are towards forwards, but it's still possible that you can get someone that gets there. So it's a situation where you have different guys. There are I have guys that I can think of that we've talked about Holland a lot and his ability to not really do an AA game. And we've now granted his chances of scoring a goal is a lot more likely than other people. But I saw you made a tweet, I think, a little bit ago about someone that has reverted to the mean. Do you want to talk about that? Because I think that's a good indication.
I don't want to talk about not saying home, but I will. So let me just pull this clown up. I did hear, like, I don't actually watch any of these games, but somebody was like, oh yeah, managerial decisions have kept him out. But basically, not saying Ho went on an absolute heater to start the season. What is this? 10 goals in 8 games or something like that. But if you notice that generally, and it's not always, but generally the AA scores were pretty low, like 6, 8, 1. He got that 32, God knows, probably all the shots on target. And then what happens when he stops scoring every game is now just a row of yellows. And like this is exactly what you get if you have low all-around score guys.
Correct.
Because
so you look at him and you're like, all right, if I get a 62 from him, cool. Like that's okay. That's most likely okay in certain lineups. Mm-hmm. But if you get a 40, that lineup's in really bad shape, no matter what level you're at. And so I will say there's also different game modes that people need to consider and compare comparatively to other things. So in All-Star Limited, right, if you're putting up 60 points, you have no ability to get up into like the tier zeros. Like if you have just like if you have a bunch of guys that are like they're capping out at like 65, like you're just realistically not getting the job done in like a limited competition to like get up there. Like, yeah, you can surely have a guy that puts up like a 50, like as you see the guy in 4th place has a 50, but that 50 is surrounded by like a 78,
right, 399,
90, 93. So it picks up the average. So you just can't really have a bunch of guys that are out there putting up 60, 60, 60, 60. You can win a reward, sure, but you can't really get to the high ends. However, when you get up to like the Division 2s and the Division 1s, the Super and the unique divisions, if a guy goes out there and puts up 65 or 70, that plays a lot better there because there's just a lot less of the elite level cards that are going to put up hundreds and those type of scores instead. So there's different things you have to consider based on whether you're in limited, all-star, rare, or the rare pro or the super rare / unique competitions. There are different cards. Like a good one that I can use right now, Yuya Osako. So I don't know if you've looked at him yet or recently, but he's been
I haven't, but I've been told not to buy him.
He's been on, they're literally, this is, Tuggy has said, don't buy him. So anyways, you look at Osaka, right? And he's just putting up 70s. He's getting 2 decisives a game. Like he's doing well. But you look, none of these games are in the 80 to 100 point range. Every time that he gets like multiple decisives, he's still struggling to get to 80. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, but it's just not realistic that this guy's going to average a 1.5 decisives a game. It's just not realistic. Like if he's doing that, he's not going to be playing the J League permanently. Sure, he's going to score goals. Well, you see what he did previously. Like you get a decisive every other game, which is great. Like that's solid. That means you're getting like a 65 or a 35. Those are your outcomes. And those outcomes are just not guys you want in like an all-star rare pro type of line.
Do you think, because I feel like we've touched on this before, and I kind of even go back and forth on it. Daniel brings this up. It feels like those guys are only useful for 240 thresholds. Like, do you prefer the higher variance guys who are like, the 30, 60, or do you like the ones that are just 45 to 55 all the time?
I mean, I think they're all whatever. Like, I don't think you really want to use them anywhere in general. Like, you're just like, it's fine. Like, where are you using, like, Yuya Sako's, like, L15 is 66. Where are you using? You can't use him in a cat mode and
Yeah, you
expect,
can't use that in caps.
like, yeah, him in a cat mode, he's like one of the worst cards you can use in a cat mode because, like, if he gets 2 decisives, he eclipses his scoreline by like 6. So it's a tricky situation where I just think like a card like this is just in a Division 3, 4, 5 situation. It's just not good. And you look at him and like, what's his price point? His price point is like a lot. Like, he's what, 0.2 ish for a rare. Like, this is a guy that literally really struggles to help you win big end cards. So I think so. Adri Zaman asked the question: is it possible to win a reward consistently in Rare Pro with 5 main players you use week in, week out? The answer, no. The answer to that is yes, but you need to have like Gil, Messi, Tadic type players. Like, you need to have like Grimaldo and Odysseus, and that's not what people want to do with that situation. Like, if you're asking, can you week in, week out get the job done and win rewards with like Melly Muhlenstein as your all-star Rare Pro defender? No, it's not realistic. Now, can you play him when they play Camber and expect to do well? Yeah, but you can't play him against Ajax, PSV, and stuff and expect to go well. So yes, you can do it, but you need to have the elite level cards that almost never have a bad situation with them.
And a goalie who's the same.
And a goalie who's the same. You need one of the best goalies in the platforms. Like, you'd need like a Thibaut Courtois, who just like almost always going to be a heavy favorite, has really good AA as it is, and is a really strong player. But yeah, it's difficult to do that and perform well.
Yeah, I feel like that's the not the missing part, but it's really tough to say like, yeah, just go get Tadic, Gil, Messi, I'll throw in there just for fun because I have him. And then being like, and whatever goalie, because like the whatever goalie is actually what will kill you. Like, you have to pay up for goalie just as much as the other ones.
Correct. Surf has just said Yuya Osako has value though right now. He's a top 4 forward, L15 overall in America and Asia. Yeah, I would argue though that like he's way overvalued because he's not going to average 1.5 decisives a game consistently. Like, so he's at top value right now and he's not going to get the job done. So Adri said he's like, I got rare Merit, super rare Kanade, super rare Lobotka, rare Griezmann, and rare Mbappe. I don't think that gets the job done frequently. I don't think Lobotka is that good. I don't think Kanade is that good. Obviously, Merit's a goalie. Like, yes, they're a decent team and he'll score okay. The other two are pretty strong. But if you're planning on running that week in, week out, you're just not going to get a reward very consistently. And it's not because like you don't have some great players. Like Griezmann and Mbappe are fantastic, but it's difficult to consistently win stuff with very limited flexibility elsewhere. Like, Lemaire is one of the better goalies from a scoring perspective, does well. So Alex just asked a question. He's like, what's the rule with a keeper? He's like, dominant teams have a goalie who will get 60 and then nothing at all, do nothing at all. Then inevitably they concede late. So the rule with goalie is they don't matter, but they do matter. I know, which is kind of a contradiction, but goalies don't really matter. They all suck. They all are going to average between 45 and 55, and you just need a clean sheet. The counterpoint to that, though, is, however, obviously goalies with better AAs that can have a strong game when they concede is preferred over goalies that do not have a strong AA game. When they concede, they will do poorly. Because if your goalie, and this goes to the point about like you can have like a 60 in your lineup and get through. If your goalie concedes and puts up like 55, your lineup is still very viable for a top end prize. I mean, look, I'm in 6th right now in Rare Pro from the weekend with 35 from my goalie. So it's a situation where, but again, he had a negative decisive and put up 35. Actually, I think he had a positive decisive too. Yeah, he had a positive and negative decisive. So but he had 20 AA. Or no, he didn't, because he had so like, but you look at Ichimori, right? Like, Ichimori, as long as he doesn't give up a negative decisive, is typically going to be in the 45 to 55 range regardless. And then if he gets a clean sheet, you're probably looking in the 75 plus ish range. Lars Understall is a good example of that situation. So I prefer guys that have more AA comparatively to a guy like Langerack. Like, if you look at Understall, right? Understall, keeps a clean sheet, he typically is going to end in the 70 to 80 range. That's where he's going to end instead of just 60. And when he concedes, he'll end in the 50 to 45 to 55 range frequently. Obviously, if you have a negative decisive, you're going to have a shit game. That's just how it is at goalie. And you can't really do that. But
that's it with any position.
Correct. If you're playing goalies on better teams, they typically will not give up 3 goals. Usually, obviously, it still can happen, but it won't happen as frequently.
Yeah, I think it's just like you said. Goalies, what was the phrase you used?
They don't matter, but they do.
Right. They don't matter, but they're the most important.
Correct.
I'll put it that way. But if you're looking for like, hey, I need 5, I'm playing 5 guys. The list of goalies that you realistically should be going after is like, is it even 3 deep? Like, is it 5?
Well, it's like, I mean, it depends if you're playing. It depends what region you're playing. I mean, I would say it's like Courtois, Mignon.
That's as far as I was willing to go.
Krab, maybe that's it. I mean, I would be okay going lower with like Ichimori types. I mean, if you want one of the second division guys like Jose Caro, I mean,
yeah, he was, yeah.
But so he's low. He's low is another one that's like been very strong, but they're keeping a lot of clean sheets. So it's just like goalies like Mike Basson talked about. Ichimori is a good example. No one interested in him at all. He literally was the 3rd goalie for Gamba and now playing on the best team in the league and is pretty damn serviceable. And I've watched the games and he looks terrible to me. Like, I don't understand why he started over Obi, but Allison's probably a reasonable example. I don't think that Liverpool can be as bad next year as they were this year. I think they figured it out a bit towards the end of the season, and I think they will be better next year. But like we talked about, like he was pretty shit this year. He was still pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's Liverpool were very disappointing this year, and Allison was still, like you said.
Yeah, so actually Victor brings up a good discussion point here in terms of Osaka. He's like, if I were to have a Vissel Kobe forward, I would much rather Muto in comparison to Osaka. And I totally agree with that. I would much rather have Muto in comparison to Osaka if I had to choose one of the Vissel Kobe guys. His AA is much better. I don't need, like, if I get one AA, there's a good shot of him in the 75 to 80 range, which is good. But he just seems a lot better of a player to me than Osaka. Similar price point. Like, to me, not much of a question. Like, I would much rather have Muto than Osaka right now. But one of the guys that we'll talk about in terms of like what you really want. So like the guy you want, the ultimate guy you want is a guy that is going to put up 20 to 30 AA and has a high chance at a decisive. And these guys that I'm talking about are like Cecina, right? Yep. If I look at Cecina, I'm like, all right, there's a pretty good shot Cecina is going to put up a good 20 to 30 AA. And if he gets, because you just, look, it's not realistic for guys to go out there and put up 3 decisives in a game. It's going to happen, but it's not frequent. Like, if people average like 3 decisives a game, they're going to win the Ballon d'Or. Like, they're the best player in the world. It's just not going to happen. What you want is Douglas Santos. Douglas Santos goes out there and he has a high probability of a decisive, which is like 33%. He's got a 33% chance at getting a decisive. And if he gets a decisive, you are pretty confident he's going to have a pretty strong game. So yeah, Alex brings up, he's like, you want Cecina, Gil, Tadic, Mbappe, and Messi. These are the super high-end guys that you want from this perspective. Now, these guys are expensive. They're going to cost you a lot to get them.
This is why.
Daniel brings it up. Daniel literally says, buy the most expensive dudes. Yes, but that's why we wanted to talk about this a bit. It's not realistic to buy the most expensive dudes to everyone. But what you can do is you can find guys that share similar traits from these guys. They just are probably not going to get a decisive as frequently as these guys. So the key is, and this is what we talked about earlier, if I go and look at a guy that has no AA game and I'm like, this guy's going to get decisives frequently, there's like no shot for him to get hundreds, right? It's just not really realistic to get up there. But if you play guys that have 20 to 30 AA, that maybe they don't get a decisive 65% of the time. They get a decisive 25% of the time. Well, that means 25% of the time, that guy is just like Messi or just like Gil or just like these other guys. So yes, you can't maybe get these other guys that are that high up there all the time, but when they do perform and when they do get their decisive action, their AA is good enough that you can get a comparable player for that week, which is all you're trying to do. Because if you're doing things at more of a discounted range, you're trying to produce once a week or like once a month or once every 3 weeks instead of once a weekend. Like you're trying to do that instead. And a few people have brought up Cherney from FC20 this year. And I think he's a good example. Obviously, he's leaving, so like his price point's down and stuff like this. But he's a lot cheaper than going and buying a Dusan Tadic, than going and buying a Messi. And you look at him and you see, you're like, oh, wow, what this guy has in his last 15 games, he has like 8 games over 80. That's good. 8 games over 80 is pretty damn good. Now, when he doesn't get there, you still get a 50, 55 buffer in a situation. So Shaforkle, as Laird would call him, just said that you go to player rankings, and sorting by AA is a good option to some extent. And I like to do it over an L40, not like an L15. However, everyone is built differently from their AA comparatively to other players. And you have to see like Carl Starfelt for Celtic. Great AA, very, very minimal decisive score. However, when I look at Starfelt's like L15, Starfelt has 1 decisive and 2 negative decisives.
Yeah.
He's probably not going to average like a 2-to-1 negative decisive ratio over the long run. Another guy that I have, so like I'm familiar with him. He's not going to show up in the rankings because he's been not great this year. But you have like Ibrahim Sangare. Sangare's AA is going to almost always be very defensive-minded AA, which therefore means that it's less likely for Sangare to rip off a decisive than it is for some of these other guys. So like you look and you see he had a lot of decisives. He had in his last 40, he has 10 decisives, but he's not super productive in terms of high end. But now if Laird clicks the all button here, you're going to see that the previous year he was a lot better and had a lot more higher end range. You see these 97s, these 100s. So is this guy like going to produce like Carlos Gil? No, but you're not paying for him to be like Carlos Gil.
When you mentioned Cerny before, so there's one guy I wanted to compare him to. He actually doesn't show up on the comparables, on the similar players, excuse me. Wait, look, this guy has a 6. So Cerny has 67 L5, 70 L15, 63 L40. I have another guy here who has a 73 L5 and a 66 L15. And he's just completely different.
Big old Kevin Van Veen.
Yeah, Kevin Van Veen, who, like, again, their L15s are, 4 points separate.
Yeah.
But as you can tell, like, Cerny doesn't need, I mean, Cerny's had tons of decisive, don't get me wrong. But like Van Vleen, excuse me, has, I mean, what is this, like 13 games in a row that he's scored? Yeah. And he scored over 80 twice.
Correct. Like if you look, this is another way to explain it, right? If I look at 2 guys, so like if we look at Van Veen and Cherney, and we look at their L15, so let's sort it by their L15 layer. Okay, so these guys, both of these guys, so Van Veen's L15 is 66. Now let's go look at Cherney's. Cherney's L15 is 69. All right. But if you look at this, if you look at the top like 7 scores or top 6 scores, they're all Cherney. Yeah. Every single one of them is Cherney. Because, I mean, I guess they're the 189. So 5 of the top 6 scores or top 7 of the top 8 or whatever are Cherney. And the reason is because Cherney has a lot better AA game. Now, if I look at Kevin Van Veen, I'm sitting there, I'm like, wow, Kevin Van Veen's probably not likely to score every single game.
Every game for the rest of his life?
Yeah, it's just not really realistic. But so like you look at these 2, like these 2 have the same L15-ish. They're close.
Yeah.
They're much different players, and Cherney is a much better player for you to have. So a couple comments that have come in a little bit is Nanzo, and this is a key one. Buy guys that are next up with a good move, or guys that are like on a team that could become a very strong player. And I will use Ron Romero to discuss this. So Ron Romero says, Mijnans could be huge next year. Great example. Sven Mijnans has pretty much integrated himself into like the attacking midfield role for AZ Alkmaar. If you remove his last couple games, I guess he's had a couple really strong games as well. But if Jesper Karlsson leaves, which is very likely, there's a shot Sven Mijnans takes every set for Alkmaar next year. During this L15, he didn't take all the sets. And you see there's a lot more dud type games in this range than there was for other players. But you see 83, 100, 87, 91, 100. Those are all games that he did well coming over and producing some high-end games for AZ in roles where, like, you see a game, he had a 86 AA or 86 with no decisive. He had a 100 with 2 decisives. He had like a 110. He had an 80 with no decisive or with a decisive. Like, it's very clear he's bringing this up. Another person, Alex Wilson, brings up Julian Dessart, and he wishes that Julian Dessart has more decisives in him. Dessart's a great example. So the issue with Julian Dessart not having the AA game or the decisive game in him, like you look at him and you're like, this is the guy though. Like if I look at Julian Dessart, if you put him in your lineup and he puts up 60, all right, you're still active. Like that lineup's still active for a reward, even a high-end reward. You're not eliminating yourself with that card. He has 0 decisives in those games. It's not realistic that Julian Dessart's going to always have no decisives. Also, Julian Dessart takes sets, but he hasn't been taking many sets. It's realistic possibility that in the future, Dessart will start taking more sets. You know what comes with sets? Decisives. So it's a situation where you can definitely scout and look more into the future. And I try to do it as much as I can in certain situations to find guys that could get an advanced role or getting a more favorable situation, whether it's with a new team or the current team, to sort of find guys. Because like you look at like Dessart's not like outrageously expensive. Sven Mijnans is still U23. He's still got a year of U23. He's not absurdly expensive. Now, are these guys 0.02 ETH for a rare? No, they're not that cheap, obviously. But they're a whole hell of a lot cheaper than other guys that are significantly more expensive, that are going to be more consistently good, though.
My favorite about the Dessart chart, which I have up on the screen here, is that his highest score from the last year had no decisive.
Correct. What about a second highest score?
Like 61 AA. Oh, yeah, and 56. Yeah.
Exactly. Like this is a guy, if I'm looking at Dessart, like I have the potential to get there regardless if he gets a decisive or not. And if I do get a decisive, I have a really good shot. Daniel Cooper actually brings up someone that I think is a very, very reasonable person to bring up right now. And that's Declan Rice. Declan Rice has shown quite a bit of a strong AA as it was. And this is a guy that's good aerially. He's good in the air. And if he's at a better team, he has more potential to get offensive contributions than he has previously. So I think that there is
they just won a trophy. What do you mean?
Yes. As Cosmo said, he wants one more year. So it's a situation where I think that Surface says that Mijnans gets subbed off every game. He has been. That is another thing that is viable. Like in the past 10 games, he's been subbed early, like 9 or 10 times. But like if you look the 10 games before that, he subbed off early 0 of 10 games. And there's a realistic possibility that someone like him could fill more into a role where he stops getting subbed as frequently. And if you're not getting subbed at the 60, 75 minute mark, that gives you more chance to generate more AA and more abilities.
Yeah, more minutes are always good.
Ooh, Nanzo brings up Bosnian Gil, Dino Hotic. That's some pain for both of us, I feel.
Tuggy blamed me. He just said I was on him. I was on Hotic before he.
So, Showchicks just brought up someone that I think is a reasonable person to bring up, and that is
Vincenzo Grifo.
And Grifo earlier in the year was a lot more solid and had more AA, but I think he's a really strong option. I think he's a really good Champ Europe super rare.
Agreed.
He has enough peaks that I think you can get away with it. But you look at him, right? Like, is he Joshua Kimmich? No. Is he priced like Joshua Kimmich? Also no. Like, I can pay 0.15 ETH and I can get a guy that, like, I'm just like, all right, you're playing a dumpy team at home. And it's like, all right, you have a pretty good shot. Like, this is a guy that's averaging like 15 to 20 AA. He takes penalties for them. He takes at least half of the sets.
Yeah.
He's a guy that can totally sit there and put up high-end games. Like, as you see, he's got a lot of games over 90s. I've talked to Kofi a bit about this recently. Like, if I look at a player, I like to think like there used to be scoring in different colorations on SorareData. There still is, right? And I think you and I both agree that it's sort of outdated, the coloration chart in terms of like what is a good game and what is like an okay game and like would you agree?
I think, yeah, it goes dark too quickly.
Yeah. So like to me, like in the past, like we're talking 2 years ago, you got 65, that was a good game. Like
Yeah,
that was
you're
a good
good.
game. Now, if you get 65, that's a solid game. It's not good, it's solid. To me, 80 is the benchmark you want to be clearing. Because if I have 5 guys that are like clearing like 75 to 80, I know I'm going to be up near the top of a leaderboard. And if I have guys that are averaging over 80 to like 80 plus points, I know that they're going to be able to pick up some slack of guys that put up like 50 to 60 or 40 to 50 or whatever. So if I have a 40 in my lineup and I have 4 guys that rip 90s, I make that up. I make up the 90s. I turn my average into like an 80, and it's all of a sudden it's a really good lineup. Whereas if I have like a guy that puts up 40 and then 4 guys that put up 60s, I'm not even getting a card. So to me, I look at a guy and I'm like, how often does this guy eclipse 80? Jonas Hoffman's a good example. I know his graph is like boom or bust right now.
It is the wildest graph.
Very
I feel
weird.
like for somebody that you think is like consistent with like everything about his situation and the games, I feel like he should be in that 65, and he has his 20 AA, and he's just all over the place and has like huge games against like really good teams sometimes. That's the worst.
Yeah.
Is that, where is it? Yeah, 97 against Dortmund. I thought he had a 95 against Leipzig, and then he'll drop like a 30 against Hertha Berlin.
I mean, another great example, and this person's not expensive, and it's for someone that we've talked about tons. And like I've used this guy to win so many cards. Robin Proper.
Yeah.
Robin Proper. So if you sort his all-time log, right? And so like some of his all-time includes him at Heracles, and they sucked. They were terrible. If I look at Robin Proper and I look through his 98 starts that he's had that are like counted on SorareData, he has about a 20% chance at being above 80. 20% of the time this guy gets above 80. Sure, he has shit games, but you know what I'm sitting there doing? If I sit there and I see Robin Proper against Ajax, I'm not like, yeah, Robin Proper, I expect a big game out of you. But what Robin Proper does is you throw Robin Proper at home against some bum teams. Robin Proper has elite level upside to put out a huge price. Nanzo brings up Conrad Lamer, and he could be a sleeper card for his price. I think that's a viable card as well. I think that makes sense. But yes, I'm looking at Robin Proper. Like Robin Proper's under 0.1 ETH for a dude who's not a bad age, going to have European football, because I think he stays at 20. Someone was mentioning earlier like a 20 stack. It's actually funny to me that I am damn sure the best stack on the platform this year was a 20 stack.
I think so too. Yeah.
It's not even close. Like I saw
like full 5 player. You could have done it with like 7 guys too. Like,
yeah,
it's not,
like it was literally like very flexible groups.
Yeah.
But like I saw it, I forget, I don't know his Sorare username, but it was like happy for you or something on Twitter.
Yeah, somebody has one. Yeah.
He won D2 and like had top 10 finishes like 10 times this year with a 20 stack.
Wild.
It was just like constant. Like you didn't see that shit with anyone else. It was just constant. Metal Gear says that Small is way better than Robin Proper. Yeah, he costs double the price. That's the point. Geese Small costs way more than Robin Proper, but you look at him and you look at both of these guys, and in Geese Small's 76 games, he probably has a very similar amount of 100 or 80 plus point games as Robin Proper. The difference is that he has way less like 10-point games than Robin Proper. So it's a situation where like Geese Small is a lot more expensive, and you're getting a guy that's going to average 4 points more per game, but they have similar peaks. They have similar high-end outcomes as each other. One's just way smaller than, or way more cheap than another. And that's the key, is like there are guys you can find that are, I'm not saying like boom or bust, but like if you have a player that just realistically they're not going to hit 80s, right? If you just have a guy that's just like, this guy's just never really going to hit 80s, that just doesn't get the job done for you in this age of Sorare. unless you're playing like D2s and D1s.
Which we all are, obviously.
Metal Gear says Proper's running a lot over EV for more than a season. I don't know if that's necessarily totally true. He's really good in the air. Like anyone that's as good in the air as him and is always the main focal point on set pieces is going to be very viable in terms of getting decisives and getting decisive actions. Like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, Solar Holland said that 20 will lose most of their best players. Yeah, it's of all teams out there that I've seen, they are going to get beat up the most that I've seen. Like most teams are going to lose players or here and there, but it seems like they're going to lose a significant portion of their team.
But they should. That's exactly how they're built.
Correct.
Like that's how those teams are built, isn't it? Like they want to get decimated because then they're selling their players for a ton of money.
Correct. Which again, though, that'll make them worse next year, and then in theory makes Proper worse. So like you're trying to find different guys in different situations that are becoming better cards than they were. And that's what the key is, right? Is like you got to find guys that make sense from that perspective. So I think there's definitely some situations where people have to factor that in, and that's something that is interesting for people. And Mike Basson said the coach of 20 is leaving. Yeah, 20 is losing a lot. Like 20 is just getting ravaged with things in and out of their team, and that's
I think that's one of like the most important things. That's not for this show specifically, but when it comes to challenger teams like that, buying the one that was good this season for next season is really dangerous unless it's like Ajax, and even Ajax was significantly worse this year than last year.
Like
so actually, include them. Yeah, like it's really tough to look at what happened in any of the challenger leagues this year and be like, oh yeah, they'll do it again. Like who is it? Zenit, Zagreb, and Benfica.
Yeah.
And after that, and frankly, you still have to watch out for all of the transfers anyway.
But like, yeah, I mean, here's a good example with Proper. And obviously, like my gallery is different than most people's, but I have in 2 years of owning Robin Proper Super, I paid like a half an ETH for it. He's generated me 7.5 ETH in rewards. Just him. And that we're talking like 24 times he won me a reward. That's a pretty significant amount.
Daniel Cooper wanted to throw Celtic in there, and now I'm hesitant now with a managerial change.
Well, yeah. Did you see their talk? Well, there's been a lot of rumors, so I guess I won't really go into the Celtic rumors. But yeah, very, very true. So Raul talked about Cherny. It seems like Cherny's going to Wolfsburg, which is
Wolfsburg, right? Yeah.
Like, so he'll be dead.
Yep.
So he'll be RIP Cherny very soon. Yeah, Matchlow says Farke's ass. Yeah,
he also might be the manager of Celtics soon.
Yeah, I've heard poor things about a lot of managerial choices that are coming have been pretty underwhelming. It seems
the only thing I saw about Fark was that Quinny was like, he's literally last on my list or something like that, and I was like, oh.
So Sorare Holland, and I agree with this. Sorare Holland says that he thinks the AZ will be 20 of next season. I actually agree with that. I think that AZ is in a really good position next year to be pretty good. Seems like they're going to return a good chunk of their roster, which I think is favorable. I think there are guys that age out, but they're going to be really strong. Like you look and Reinders, it looks like Reinders probably is back. Looks like Lassie's probably back. Looks like Sugawara's probably back. It does look like they'll lose Kirkez, obviously. They'll lose Carlson, but I think they might return like a good portion of their team. And they also had a lot of guys this year that got like experience. Like Walter Goes is like their 5th center back, and dude played like 15 games and looked pretty damn good. So I think there's a good shot that Alkmaar is pretty strong next year for the Dutch options. Matt Schlow brings up Max Wittick. I think Wittick was someone that is a great example of this. Wittick has some major upside. I mean, Max Wittick's L5 layered is 86.
I know. I didn't really want to talk about him because
he's viable.
I'm trying to buy high on him.
Yeah, it's not even buying high though. His price is 0.068 for a rare. Like this is a guy that has 80 plus games in his repertoire.
Sure.
Very realistic he gets there. You just can't play a guy like this all the time. Surface ask, can Georgie get a starting position? I think no. Right now, it depends what they do in the left wing position. Because I think that
for Alkmaar.
I think that there's a situation where like he could go to that left wing position and replace Carlson there, but I think it's probably Van Brederode is the first up there, and then like it's possible he would replace Mijnans or Reinders. What could happen? So like I think that Reinders is like 70-30 to stay or leave. And if he leaves, I think they could bump Mijnans back to Reinder's spot and move Georgie into the advanced midfielder spot that Mijnans takes. And Santa's boys asked a valid question. This is like what you should be looking for with stuff. Who is the next Joao Mario? Joao Mario was incredibly good the first half of the season. And this is the thing that I don't think people fully grasp. But like there are certain teams that are going to be really damn good. And if you can just sort of identify who the next people on that team are that are going to come up and be that guy, I think that there is a lot of flexibility that can happen for you. You just have to be correct on the situations. Like I don't think this person's going to be up in the attacking roles for Benfica, but like Benfica is going to be really good. Alex Wilson actually literally just mentioned him. Yeah. And if Tangstad could get minutes for Benfica on the wing, if Casper Tangstad were able to find his way into the starting lineup and be a consistent starter for Benfica, he's someone who you'd really, really want to have. And there's just teams that are going to be really strong that if you can get inroads into them, it could put you in really good position. Tangstad is someone that makes sense. I don't think he's going to be in that position due to the fact that he couldn't really break in this year at all to get any sort of minutes. So Sorare Holland says Kachu will be way better than Joao Mario next year. I agree. So that's a good example of someone that I think is probably going to be even better than they were, which was already a great player. But you see that his price has risen from 0.215
skyrocketed
11 days ago to 0.54 as a high, which was Pranksy. Oh no. So like this is a guy that I think is really damn good.
Yeah, he should be really good. Somebody, where was this here? Mickey Fu said, I don't think Benfica will be as dominant next season.
And
I'm not sure why. Like, I don't think anybody else is getting much better.
No, but it doesn't even matter if they're that dominant, right? Because you brought up the discussion about Ajax sucking this year. But like Ajax sucked and Tadic is still really damn good. So it just doesn't matter. And so Rico,
I'm just saying if you went into last season buying Ajax last season, like in preparation of this season, then you were disappointed with almost everybody except probably Tadic, right?
True. But Edson Alvarez improved. Timber wasn't bad. Like
it wasn't bad, but he also was like peak price after last season.
So I think there is Mike Baston wants Johnny Reinders to go to Ajax to replace Klaas, and I also will sign off on that. I also will.
Everyone who thinks that going to the Ajax midfield is a good thing is so funny to me.
Yeah, but I think their team's going to change over the next couple of years. I think it could be. I think it could be a situation where it becomes more relevant.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a rumor of. I don't know if you saw the rumor of Tati to Benfica.
Yeah, that sounds like something that Tati himself would try to pull off.
There's also rumors of Pavlidis going to them. Yeah, Alex Wilson says Spurzian to Ajax. He should be really good, which I don't disagree with. Like Spurzian in theory is pretty good, but again, so Spurzian, which I'm happy to see this. By the way, it seems like the market is like trending back upwards to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've seen guys like I can't get the auction of prices that I want on guys, but like you look at Spurzian went from 0.1 to 0.4. Because of the rumors to Ajax.
Yeah.
Now the last one hadn't sold for a while, but like it's stuff like this. Like I'm at least seeing these guys that are like rumored to go to big high end things are at least getting some different like trend upwards.
Yeah, I mean the good news is that you can't get burned by those rumors at all. So it's just a win-win for everyone.
Yeah.
Metal Gear's asking how Kirchu is going to be better without pens and not as many set pieces.
It's not definitive he doesn't take some of that stuff. I mean, they weren't thrilled with their set piece takers this year. He also could. He might not. And if he doesn't take it, he probably is worse. So it's definitely possible that Kachu becomes worse.
He's still so much younger than like I always think he is.
Yeah, he is. He's still got years of U23. Like, if you get 2 years of him at Benfica, what a card that is.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I bought one 2 years ago.
Do you think everybody just looks, and I know they're not like the same player, but everybody just looked at Enzo when he was there and they're just like, oh, Kirchu should be better than that?
I think it's pretty realistic. People think he's going to be in Enzo's role pretty much.
Right.
Santa's boy says Joao is the pen taker for sure. So it's there you go. Kachu didn't really take many.
He only took 2 this year. Kirchu, that is.
So it's a situation. I think it's also more of a like. There's so much uncertainty with like everyone, right? Like we're looking at every player, and you're like, I don't know where this guy's gonna go. I don't know where that guy's gonna go. Kachu, you're like, I know where he's going, and it's a damn good spot.
Yeah.
And that's why I think a lot of his price is rising up.
Right. Like it's a really good spot. Whether he like immediately steps into it is different, but you know that there is a clear path to that being a really, really good spot. Like we've seen that spot be really good. Like that's the other thing.
Correct. I mean, the Portuguese league is pretty weak at the bottom. It seemed like, I mean,
as long as you're on one of the 3 at the top, like Porto, Benfica, well, you don't even need to be on Sporting. They didn't even have that many great players.
Well, Sporting or Braga was ahead of Sporting in the standings.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. Mike Basson said Kirchu is like Frank Ribery used to, way older than he is, but looks it.
Yeah. I mean, Kachu does look a lot older than 22. That's true.
Yeah. How do you feel, Malky's asking this, about good AA players in bad teams? Do they trump matchup considerations?
So it's tricky. It's tricky if you have a good – it's always difficult for me to look at my guys. For someone with a small gallery, I think those are the type of guys you really want, right? You want guys that are going to be good no matter what. Even if they're on a bad team, like you can get a bit of a discount with them. The person I'm sort of thinking of in my head, but I guess it wasn't as good this year, was Tanani. But I guess he's still pretty good. So like if you look at like Tanani, like
Soleimani is another one that pops in to my head. Soleimani.
Yeah, Soleimani is another one that makes sense. If you look at like Tanani, he's on NEC and he has decent AA. It's pretty strong, and he has a lot of decisive despite being on a bad team. The issue is like still, I'm gonna look at it and I'm gonna be like, oh shit, they're playing Ajax this weekend. I really don't want to use this card, and it makes it a bit more difficult.
I feel like at least in the Eredivisie, there are the number of teams where you say that though is more than others. Like you're gonna play him against Alkmaar or Feyenoord. Like I feel like there's so many times you're like, oh shit, that's who they're playing. Oh, you're gonna play him against 20. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this has been mentioned, but like Maxim Osipenko from Rostov is an example. Like he's been pretty damn good as a center back, despite being on a not great team. But Rostov was like top 5 in league. But again, like you see them playing Zenit, you're not like, yeah, I want to play Osipenko.
Yeah, sweet.
Actually, here's a funny thing for people. Joao Amaral just said, wait for a Joao Neves card. Did I tell you Joao Neves' full name?
I don't think so.
You won't see it on here, but do you want to know his full? Do you want to know his full name, like full actual name?
Yeah, hit me.
I'm gonna give the chat. Chat, do you want to guess what Joao Neves' full name is? It's Joao XX Neves. So there's 2 names in the middle that are part of it. So we'll see if anyone in the chat knows it, and then I'll tell you later. You'll get a kick out of it. But yeah, I thought Joao Neves was really good this year. I was pretty impressed watching him play. The issue is that I don't know what type of role he's going to have next year. I guess it depends what they do with Florentino Luis. If he's going to be there, I think it's going to be difficult for Joao Neves to get full game time because they're not bringing in Kachu and not playing him. Like Kachu's playing in the role Enzo effectively was in.
Right.
It's just someone that's going to play. But like I thought Joao Neves was really good at the so Blue Tomatoes guess Joao, Cristiano Ronaldo, Neves. It's actually close, Laird. So Joao Neves's full given name is Joao Pedro Gonzalez Neves. There we go. Joe Ducey knew. So yeah, his name is Joao Pedro Gonzalez Neves.
Where's Pote going? He's gone too.
Aston Villa was
Aston Villa that's still happening, huh?
Well, I don't really follow tons of. I don't really have time right now to follow all of the news and notes with stuff. But yeah, the most rumored spot that I have heard for Pote is Aston Villa, which is unfortunate.
Yeah,
for me because I own multiple Pedro Gonzalez's. But
yeah.
you know that's the issue with having
Challenger guys,
Challenger
young
guys.
challenger players. Yeah,
If you have a guy that's not good enough to go elsewhere, that's tough.
yeah. This comment from Surface I wanted to pick up. He said, "Good AA on bad teams is something to really consider on the margins as you progress in Sorare up to pro and super rare divisions," which I think is a really
So
smart thing
yeah,
to say.
I want to say that. So here's my hesitation, right? I think guys like that are good for smaller galleries because they're typically cheaper. The issue is that when you get up to a bigger gallery size and you get up, or not even a bigger gallery size, when you get to having guys that are like elite level players or like really super high end guys, it's hard to look at like we'll use Pedro Gonzalez because we're just talking about Pedro Gonzalez, and Pedro Gonzalez is at home as a massive favorite against a team at the bottom of the Portuguese league. It's really difficult to sit there and I be like, I want to play Tanani against Ajax, or you're just always going to play the guy that's a really favorable matchup.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I just wanted to point out Callum was saying that we gave away the whole answer here because his full name is in the URL here.
There you go. But you didn't see it later.
Nobody guessed because of that, or maybe Joe saw it.
Maybe Joe saw it, but I knew it because I looked it up before because I liked him, so I looked up Joao Neves and wanted to see. I think I looked up his transfer market before, and saw that was his full given name or something because it shows up on his wiki page, and I laughed about it.
Skazma wanted to bring up Federa. I assume that's how you say his name.
Yeah, Federa was really good for quarter.
Great A for an awful side.
Yeah, it's a situation. So
did they get relegated? They did, right?
No. Yes.
Sultan. Yeah, I think they did. Yes. Yeah.
Tuggy said good AA on bad teams also leads to a good transfer the following season. Correct? Not always. It typically though, if you're the issue is that like a transfer can be elsewhere to like a bad Champ Europe side. Like it's not guaranteed you're gonna like get and move up to Ajax or something. Like you could go to like I don't know, Augsburg or something. Like it's not guaranteed you're gonna get a good you're in a good position. So Rico Man has brought up Tenlongo twice. He said Tenlongo could be a good player if he replaces Ugarte. Totally. If you can sit there and you can scout guys that are going to step into that new role that are an upgrade over what they were doing and what they previously had done, then those are the type of guys that you were doing. And someone asked me the other day, I couldn't remember who it was. I actually tried to look at it, and Mikey Food has talked about it. As long as Melly keeps playing DM, he's going to be really good. I don't even know where Melly's going to be next year.
I was going to say, I read an article the other day about how he wants to play in England, and I was like, no.
Yeah, no, don't go to England. We don't want to see you in England. But so if you have Tenlongo, right, and Tenlongo all of a sudden fills in for what Ugarte did, well, that's a great card, and you could have got it 4 days ago for 0.023 ETH for a rare. Like if you look at Ugarte was really damn good this year. If I can buy Tenlongo for 0.02 ETH, it was a 19-year-old replacement for what you got Ugarte to do. That's a great card. That's the type of stuff that you got to be figuring out, and you got to do stuff. Fling Flong brings up Enzo Lafite at Rennes could be really good. So I agree with that. The issue is if Beauregard is there,
it's done. He's like
Enzo's likely not great.
Right.
If Beauregard leaves, it's a lot better card because Enzo's a lot more likely to be on the A. Kevin Hurd brings up Alexander Alvarado. It's a brilliant mix of decisives and A. The issue is he's in the Chilean league, which is I think it's the Chilean league. Could be the Ecuadorian league. I'm not even sure. But it just becomes tricky from that. So Fling Flong thinks that they will share sets. If they do, then yeah, it's really, really good for Enzo because that team I think could be really good next year. Like they in theory are really, really good.
Yeah, and Nanzo brings up somebody from your favorite club.
So, yeah, here's the thing. Rodrigo de Paul, before he went to Atletico, when he was at Udinese, was great.
Yeah,
He was really good card. Then he obviously went to Death, and the issue is, right, is like I look at DePaul, and I do agree with Nanzo. He's been strong. I just don't know how good he can be on that team.
Speaking of the Atletico Madrid guys, like, because obviously Griezmann has been incredible this season, like literally one of the best players on the platform.
Yeah,
playing for arguably the worst team possible to play for this platform.
Correct.
There's so many guys who have like played well and then just disappeared. And Marcus Llorente is the one. Like Marcus Llorente is a card that I was like dying to get long ago.
Yeah,
like very long ago.
When I first came on, he was one of the guys I tried to get. I'm pretty sure Surface, if you're still here, you bought his Super. I think. How much did you pay for his Super? But at the time when Surface bought the Super, I was like, damn, that's a good price. And now you probably look at it and you're like, damn, that's horrendous.
Yeah,
so Surface is still here. Let me know how much you paid for, because I'm pretty sure you bought one, and I was jealous because I was like, that's a great card. But
yeah. But so Daniel brings this up, and I feel like a lot of other people do. It's like, imagine how great Griezmann would be on another team. I'm not sure he gets better.
Same. I'm not sure he gets better anywhere except for like PSG or something.
I don't even know. I don't think he can get better.
No. I mean, Griezmann's been fantastic. But the issue is the role that Griezmann has right now is fantastic. Takes every set, almost takes every penalty. Well, I think actually sometimes other people take penalties, but he like drops back in the midfield, gets some defensive work in, so gets some interceptions and stuff. Creates a lot of chances for them. It's just really, really favorable in that situation. So Pico actually asked a little bit ago, what is the best landing spot for James Maddison in terms of Sorare? I think Spurs is really good for him if he goes there. And the reason is you basically, the keys with James Maddison is he needs to be on all sets and penalties. If Harry Kane leaves, he has the possibility to be on penalties. He doesn't even need penalties, I guess. It's just like he is all offensive. Like all of his work rate is going to be offensive, which is obviously the best type of AA. Because if the AA is offensive, AA, that is a lot more likely to get a decisive than defensive AA.
Yep. Yeah.
Adri just asked about Alexis McAllister. I mean, he's going to a team where the midfielders are generally really, really not good.
Yep.
And I don't know what to expect from him there. I don't know if he's going to just be locked into every days. And to be honest, he was not great at Brighton. He was okay at Brighton. Like I'm not saying he was bad. And I mean, I guess maybe he's even slightly better than that. But the issue is I just don't know if he's going to be in a position to really succeed there. Yeah, Nanzo brings up a good point. Atletico really struggled from the Griezmann contract situation from the beginning of the year. That really hampered things, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up Umar Saleh because Surface said is someone who has an elite A and was on a good team but is linked to Torino. What do you think of that? We've already seen what everybody thinks of it because he was linked to Torino last year and it absolutely cratered his price.
Yeah, we all literally got to witness that exact situation.
But that exact one, yeah.
So Daniel Cooper brings up, isn't Thiago good when not dying? And that is true. Thiago Alcantara has been pretty good when he doesn't die for Liverpool. But even then, like, I don't know.
He's fine, Sean.
The answer is Liverpool mids are that good. The way they play isn't the best for their midfielders.
No, he's fine.
But it's not bad. I'm not saying it's a bad card. I'm not saying it's going to be so Surface played 4K for Llorente. So you probably paid that one as like 2K in ETH. So you probably paid like, I guess I could look it up. You probably paid like 2 ETH for him. But like when you bought it, I remember being like, damn, that's a damn good card.
It was a great card.
But like now, yeah, you looking back, it's like, oh man, that was a dumpster fire, which is just how it goes, right?
Yeah.
Actually, you probably traded. Oh no, you still own. Yeah, so Surface paid 1.925 for Llorente. Or 1.95. But like when Surface bought that card, I was like, man, I love that card. I was like, I really wish I bought that card.
Yeah.
and then just but again, you've been able to find new use for it recently with the new cat modes and
New
stuff.
cat mode, yeah.
Surface was able to win Cat 270 with Lorente, super rare. So was able to get in a unique and a nice super rare. And he got second in Champ Europe super rare with it. So he's, even though the card's been terrible, he's found ways to utilize it and get info out of it. So Scosmo actually brings up someone that I wish was younger, because I think there could be a definite thing. And he brings up Payet. He says there's going to be a resurgence of Dimitri Payet with a new manager. Payet, we saw last year was like, Payet last year was Griezmann. Would you agree? Like, that's pretty much what Payet was last year. He was pretty much like Griezmann.
I thought I could play Champion Europe rare back a while ago just because I had Dimitri Payet.
Apparently, you're just really bad at knowing what you can and can't play. First, you think you can play that with like just Payet. Then you don't think you can play U23 Rare Pro, and then you're all up in the leaderboards over and over again, Laird. You're struggling.
I mean, if getting a podium is struggling, then I don't want to succeed.
No, I mean, you're struggling in the fact you didn't think that was possible. You doubted Korean Timber, and he just is.
No, come on. Don't do that. I owned the super rare before you did.
Flonks brings up, I can't make up my mind whether Vinny is a 1.5 ETH card or not because of his AA. I think Vinny is as good of a, for me, Vinny's like a top 5 card on the platform. So it just depends how much you think that's worth. Like,
I think you're wrong.
That he's a top 5 card?
Yeah.
Who do you think?
I think the reason why we think he's a top 5 card is because he's now like the top U23 forward.
Yeah, which
the separation between Vinny and everyone else is much smaller than the separation between Mbappe, who had that moniker, and everyone else. And so
I mean, when we say Vinny, when I'm saying Vinny's a top 5 card, I mean like the actual card and the longevity that you get out of Vinny is a top 5 card, not the actual production. Production standpoint, Vinny's like not an elite level god, right? Vinny's good, but he's not like, oh my God, Vinny's the best player of all time.
Sure.
Like if you're owning cards on the platform, like who are the 5? Like if I told you could have 5 cards today to keep, and like you have to keep them, what are the 5 cards you're going to take?
Mbappe.
Yep.
5 years?
Sure.
I just mean that takes Messi out. Gil.
Okay. Obviously.
Yeah. Am I making a lineup? Do I need a goalie?
No, just 5 cards.
Yeah. Mbappe, Gil, Kimmich.
Okay.
I don't know who else I would.
I mean, you can use Vinny.
I mean, but I just don't think Vinny. Like, I think I could take like Bellingham just as much as Vinny.
Sure.
Like, I just, yeah.
No, I understand what you're saying. You're saying like the gap at the top. Like if I'm taking one card on the platform, I'm taking Mbappe, right? Like that's the card I'm taking. But I also agree with what Flonk says. He says that Vinny feels like he can still get better. I agree with that.
Yeah, maybe. Sure.
I feel like Vinny can improve and become better. I think like, if you look at the cards, you're looking at like Vinny. I think it's like Mbappe at the top. Then I think it's like Holland, Vinny, Bellingham, Kimmich. That's probably the next group. And then after that, you go down to like more people that like you go to like Musiala, Wirtz, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so like, but I think, I think Vinny's, so like in terms of his price and his 1.62, like worth it for Vinny. It's really just a matter of like what you think the card should be in terms of price point. Because like, here's an example.
Yeah, I just think that if you're looking like, what did the best U23 forward that happens to play in Champion Europe cost? And it was like, well, that was Mbappe's cost. And it's like, well, it's not Mbappe anymore. It's Vinny. Vinny doesn't cost what Mbappe should cost.
Correct. He costs a lot less.
Oh yeah, Scosmo's right. Arda Güler.
Buy him. Represent.
Yeah.
Arda Güler. Yeah. Yeah. I know I'm representing for Basil bot. Hey, I found a Arda Gurler like eBay place to buy the Gurler jersey, so I bought one. Basil's like, let me know how it is, and I'm gonna buy one if it's good. And then Basil bought one too.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, like I think like right, like if you look at it here, and there's no one I don't think you're gonna tell me is definitively worth more than Vinny after Mbappe and Kimmich, right?
I guess, but I'm just like, I'm not sure the other ones are definitively less than Vinny.
No, but they're not. Like, I mean, you look at it, like, I mean, you look at Musiala, and I mean, that's a good point, right? And like, you look at Musiala. Musiala cost right now 0.9 ETH. Would you rather have Musiala at 0.19 or 0.9? Would you rather have Vinny at 1.5, or would you rather have Holland at 2? And I know which one you're definitely going to say you don't want, and that's Holland at 2.
Right.
So so it's
I think
like
it's Musiala.
what?
I think it's Musiala.
Yeah, and that's very viable, right?
Yeah.
But like, all right, let's say
it's one of those that I think anybody's going to give you a different. Like if you were like pick one of
correct.
Verts, Guler, who Chani is trying to correct us on, as we keep saying Gurler.
Arda Guler. Is that better?
Guler, Verts, Bellingham, Vinny. I don't even want to put Haaland in. Bellingham. Like I just feel like if you ask anybody, I don't think there's a wrong answer, but I don't think there's a consistent answer either.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that there's a Guler.
Yeah, Guler. Maybe.
We can call him Gooey. Can we just call him Gooey? That sounds fun.
And Mike, for the record, I don't call him Basil. I call him Basil. Like his
actually, so here's another thing. So you call him Chani, but like I feel, what is the pronunciation for Chani? How does he get that? Because I definitely, when I first saw his name like a long time ago, I thought it was Connie.
Yeah, no, I pronounce it Chani because that's how he says it.
No, I know that, but I'm saying like, where is that pronunciation from?
It's from his parents who came up with the name and spelled it that way.
Yeah, but I'm saying like that, but that's what I'm saying. Like if you look at it, right, from an American perspective, you would think Connie, right?
Yeah, but he's not American either.
No, I know he's not American. Thank you, Larry. I'm aware.
I'm not gonna let this one go.
I'm aware, but it's like Pulisic or Pulisic, right? There's the Americanized way that it is. Yeah, it's Pulisic in American, but it's Pulisic if you look at like Croatian or something. So it's tricky. My name is so his name is Kaner. Yeah, so like your name is Kaner, right? It's pronounced Kaner. Is it pronounced Chauner?
As opposed to Chauner, right?
Yeah, is it pronounced Chauner or is it pronounced Kaner? Because like I'm thinking of like Kaner Erkin, and I always call him Kaner Erkin, but that just could be because my pronunciation is incorrect on it. But that's like the Americanized way of pronouncing it. So let's see what Chauny says. Maybe it's Chauner. If it's actually supposed to be Chauner, that's interesting. And if it's Kaner, then I'm like, maybe it should be Caney instead of Connor.
It is Channer.
It's not Kaner. It's Chauner, Chauny. Okay. All right. So it's supposed to be ch instead of ka.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm like my wife's second grade class learning pronunciations. Okay. So like if I look at like Kaner Erkin, Chauny, it's really supposed to be
Chauner.
Okay.
Chauner Erkin.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's probably Erkin too.
Yeah, so you learn tons of new pronunciations. So Flonk asked a good question, I think, here. Wonder what Saka's price would be if he was a forward. I think that's a pretty interesting question. I think he would be a really high-end forward. Like, all right, if you had a Bukayo Saka as a forward, would you rather have him or Vinny?
Like Saka, no doubt.
Just no doubt for you, Saka, if it's Saka versus Vinny and a forward? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
3 extra years of U23 for sure. Oh, two extra, excuse me.
Yeah. But that's why you're and another one, Kvara. If Kvara was a forward card, like I've won that card twice and sold it immediately twice because I just don't really see me using it as a mid. But as a forward, I could see me using it. But even he's not really that much. It's not. Tuggy just said it's Chon, not Sean.
Chon, not Sean.
But like, yeah, I mean, let's put it this way: you and I both were pretty much of the viewpoint that the reverting to the mean here for Caveira was basically how his last 10 went, or last 15. That was much more realistic than him ripping 80 to 90s every game. Yes. But it's also not realistic that he has one decisive in his last. He has one decisive in his last 15 games. That's crazy.
It happens. It happens.
Yeah, but no, I mean, there's lots of interesting decisions and cards out there from a perspective of what you'd rather have, and if you can only choose one of them, you have to make a choice that might be difficult, because, like you said, there's no real right answer. There's not really a wrong one either, though. It's sort of like,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Like if Haaland puts up 50 goals next year, like Haaland might be the guy you want, because at least in that situation, you're always getting a decisive and it's keeping you up. Because scoring, I'm pretty confident scoring as of now, this could change, but I'm pretty confident scoring is going to go down in U23 next season. Because you're losing a lot of super high end guys, and I'm not sure you're going to get those high end guys back. You're going to get good players, obviously. You're going to get replacements that are good, but like I don't think you're going to get an Mbappe level replacement in U23, right? I don't know if you're going to get like Jesper Karlsson, Jota level replacements there. I think that maybe what we had from them was a bit high end, and we're not going to get that sort of output again.
I mean, Karlsson wasn't even that good this year.
No, Karlsson was pretty shit this year, but like the previous year, he was really good. And not so. Fling Flong brings up a good person that makes a lot of sense, and that's Terrier. Terrier is a top 3 champ forward. I would definitely say that Terrier was probably top 5-ish, maybe. I don't think I would say higher. I think he's definitely in the top 5-ish range, maybe top 6.
It was a torn ACL, right?
But I mean, those come back off torn ACL. That team's really stacked. They have a lot of people that are going to eat set pieces regardless. But I think he's definitely worth a good flyer. Like his price point is really cheap. Like you got him at 0.3-ish ETH. You could probably get him out right now, give or take. So he's a really, really good card going forward.
Yeah. I like, Scosmo brought him up. De La Feu was another torn ACL recovery that.
Yeah. My boy, Jerry D.
Yeah.
Gotta love Jerry D.
Yeah. Anyway.
Mike Bassam brings us something. I saw it. Yeah, there's been a couple mentions of Berardi. Berardi is a good example. Berardi's linked to move to Lazio, but I'm sure he's still a strong option. Like it's not like he's not strong in that situation. So I think that that's valid as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's been fantastic. There's not much else you can do with that.
China said, didn't we have a guy in Italy that Laird loved at Verona or something? You are completely right, although he's not at Verona anymore.
What's his name? He was at
Gianluca Caprari was his name. He's at Monza now.
Yeah, he was definitely not the guy you fell in love with, Laird.
Not anymore, no.
To be fair, again, though, this goes back to like 2 years ago to like nowadays. 2 years ago, that range in the middle there was good. Nowadays, I don't think that's good. I think that's just like okay.
Yeah.
That's for a Champ Europe card, for a Champ Europe forward, that's like good. But like that's like it's not like high level, right? It's not like the high level guys.
Yep. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like we're just naming guys. So what do we got? An hour and 20 minutes almost. All right. That's enough for us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and for throwing out all these names. I definitely needed to be reminded about my failed Gianluca Caprari experiment, so thank you for that. I did own his 1 of 100, though, and I traded it for, I don't remember what, but I also had a Marcus Llorente 1 of 100 that I traded. Forget what it was. Some terrible trade, I'm sure, that Pavel just laughed at me for. But anyway, thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you could please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Even though Chani told me those things aren't that important, they're important to me. So if you could just do it for me, that'd be greatly appreciated. I'll be back tomorrow for office hours. Wednesday, limited time only. Thursday, Sorare Andrews. Friday, off topic. So hope you guys can all join us. Thank you very much, and good luck this week.